I'll call the meeting to order. Thank you for everybody attending. And I'm going to ask, is there any declaration of pecuniary interest on the agenda? One of the members of the committee? Seeing none, if it does arise, it can be declared at any time. Ms. Noble, could you give us an update on anybody that is joining us online?
Thank you. And through you, Mayor Eccles, before I begin, at any point, if you get disconnected, you can dial 1-647-558-0588 and enter the ID for this meeting, which is 891-5626-2480. Both member of council and staff have been briefed on the various features of the Zoom meeting software and will be raising their hands physically to speak. For members of the public, if you require any technical assistance, please send a chat message to myself, Ashley Noble, Communications Coordinator, and I will attempt to assist you. It should be noted for members of the public that this meeting is taking place across two meeting platforms, both on Zoom as well as being live streamed on YouTube. Public participation, if any, must be done through Zoom, cannot be done through YouTube at this time.
Thank you, Ashley. This is a zoning amendment public meeting for ZA 10 2024, part lots 26, concession 10, north of the Durham Road. I have a few preliminary things to make mention of. I'd like to remind everyone that the purpose of this public meeting is to receive input from the public. Every person who attends a statutory public meeting required under the Planning Act shall be given an opportunity to make representation in respect to the proposed bylaw. All submission materials for this application are available at the Westgrade Municipal Office during regular business hours. Recent amendments to the Planning Act by the province now limit the appeal rights on zoning bylaw amendment applications to the applicant, public bodies, and specific persons who made oral or written submissions to the municipality prior to the decision being made. Specified persons generally include energy, railroad, telecommunication providers, as well as NAV Canada. This meeting is an essential part of the decision-making process. Feedback received will be considered in the decision of the Westgrade Council. An explanation of how the public and agency comments factored into the decision will be included in the notice of passing of the bylaw. Where changes are made to the proposed bylaw after the holding of the public meeting, Council will determine if any further notice will be given respecting the proposed bylaw, and the determination of Council as to the giving of further notice is final and not subject to the review in any court, no matter the extent of the change made in the proposed bylaw. All right. Those are my announcements, and I believe the clerk has some preliminary instructions as well, too. Jamie?
Thank you, Mayor Eccles. Notice of this public meeting was circulated to the prescribed bodies, posted on the subject property, and mailed to all property owners within 120 meters in accordance with the Planning Act. Anyone wishing to provide verbal comments at this public meeting is asked to sign the sign-in sheet located on the speaker's table. The personal information collected at this public meeting is collected under the authority of the Planning Act. The information collected will be used to complete the zoning bylaw amendment process and will form part of the public record. Questions about this collection should be addressed to me, the Director of Legislative Services / Clerk. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the corporation and the municipality of Westgrade and the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, you must make a written request to the municipality of Westgrade, care of the Director of Legislative Services / Clerk. Okay.
Thank you, Clerk Eckensweiler. We will now take presentations from the presentations from the planning staff, Westgrade planning staff to start with. Director Smith. David.
Thank you, Mayor Eccles. Council, just for public information to begin with, there will be 3 separate presentations. Westgrade, myself, will present on the zoning amendment for the Crawford subdivision, referred to as the Crawford subdivision. The County of Grey is the approval body for the subdivision layout, design in and of itself, and they are also in attendance this afternoon. As I mentioned, we'll be giving a presentation to council and to yourselves, the public. And the applicant's planning consultant is also will provide a presentation to council this afternoon on the subdivision and the zoning. The presentations are very similar in nature because of course they're all related to the same property. Although each of the two bodies, in particular the county and the municipality of West Gray, have different responsibilities within the subdivision, and West Gray's council in particular is concerned with the zoning of the property, whereas the county looks at more specifically the lotting arrangements and things like that in partnership with West Gray. Anyways, as I mentioned, Miracles, file Z10-2024, DJ Land in the settlement area of Crawford. You bring up, please, a part of the presentation. We will be leaving this particular drawing up, which is a drawing of the proposed development. The location of the development is within the secondary settlement area of Crawford. The application proposes to change the zoning on the property from restricted agriculture holding and a natural environment zone to an R1A low-density residential, a revision to the natural environment boundary, and to an open space zoning. The effect of the application is to allow for a new subdivision of 34 single detached homes with a new street A on a proposed cul-de-sac with 22 of the 34 single detached lots, with 12 single detached lots to front on with direct access onto Moolock Road. The lots will be serviced with private septic systems and private wells. There would be a new stormwater management block, Block 35, shown on the drawing, to be created and transferred at some point in time to the municipality of West Gray. The parkland requirements required under the Planning Act will be satisfied by a cash in lieu payment to the municipality of West Gray as opposed to lands. And as I mentioned before, conditions of the draft plan of subdivision approval are to be prepared by and approved by the County of Gray. Go down one more, please. In terms of location, most of you are familiar with the parcel as it sits within the settlement area of Crawford in pink. Those are the lands owned by the applicant themselves. Next. The official plan. This is the Gray County official plan. The Gray County official plan sets out our upper level planning directions. And in this particular case, this property, as I mentioned, is within the secondary settlement area of Crawford, which is very important to us from a policy perspective. Next. Within the county official plan are various constraint layers, and this particular property has very few. There's a little bit of green, as you can see on the east side, and a little bit of green on the very south end of the property, which represents significant woodlands, and those portions are proposed to be within a natural environment zone. Next, please. The current West Gray zoning bylaw, the property, as I mentioned, is zoned restricted agriculture holding, and with a little bit of natural environment in the green that flows through on a small creek or small stream that flows from east to west. Next. The proposed zoning schedule. We'll start with the green. That is the natural environment areas on the property to be slightly expanded. They match up with parts of the green we showed on the other maps and also follow along the small creek area, small area in dotted stippled. That is at the corner of a street A and Moolock Road, which would be a stormwater management pond. And the remainder of the lands in the diagonal striping to be zoned an R1A low density residential for septic systems and wells. And that is my presentation, Mr. Mayor, Council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. And we have some presentation stuff from county council planners. Sandra and Brittany.
Great, thank you. Am I close enough to this? Everyone can hear me
Absolutely.
okay? Perfect. So just as my slides are coming up onto the screen there, my name is Cassandra Dillman, and I'm the county planner assigned to this file, Crawford subdivision. Wait a second here. Perfect, thank you. And maybe we can just go to the next slide. So in my presentation today, I will provide a confirmation of notice, an overview of the subdivision process, and review some of the comments received. So today's public meeting is legislated under the Planning Act and is a required part of the public process for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, which David just spoke to. While a public meeting for the subdivision application is not legislated, they are recommended. The purpose of the public meeting is to introduce and learn about the proposed development, as everyone has just described to us in the presentation before, and receive public comments to be considered in future decision-making. Next slide, please. So the notice was circulated electronically to internal and external agencies and First Nations and to interested parties that requested notice on September 25th. The notice was also circulated by mail to properties within 120 meters of the subject lands and by posting a notice on the property. Next slide, please. So at a really high level overview, I've outlined the planning process on this slide. I will note I've attempted to illustrate this in a very linear manner. Many of these steps happen at the same time, and many of them occur a few times, and sometimes they can even change order slightly. So in terms of roles, West Grey Council is the decision-making authority for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, and Grey County Committee of the Whole would be the decision maker regarding the proposed draft plan of subdivision. So a pre-submission consultation with the developer, the municipality, and county staff identified submission requirements, and then those studies were submitted in support of the applications. The notice of complete application was then circulated on June 24th. That's step 2. And we are at step number 5, the public meeting. And the next steps there are all in white. So those include a continued review of the application, including the technical reports, public comments, providing comments to the applicant, and then receiving any necessary modifications to the application. So after that, staff, so West Grey staff and county staff would prepare a report to those bodies for decision. And then after a subdivision application has received draft approval, the applicant has up to 3 years to complete conditions. This may be extended. Sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's longer, before a final approval and then the building permit process. Next slide, please. So the agent for the application will be providing a bit more detail about the subject lands. But I will bring your attention to the graphic there on the right. So in pink, that's the settlement area of Crawford, and it includes the subject lands. The official plan identifies Crawford as a secondary settlement area. These areas typically have lower density and have partial or private servicing. Residential uses are permitted. Next slide, please. And actually, maybe we'll just go to the next slide as well. So on this slide, you can see the proposed draft plan of subdivision. David had also shown a plan. Mulock Road is down towards the bottom of the screen, and then concession 10 is on your left. So the application proposes there are 34 single detached dwellings serviced by private wells and septics. The new road, which is identified as Street A, would connect to Mulock Road and provide access for 22 of those lots. Next slide. We've circulated the proposal to internal departments as well as external agencies and First Nations, and we're still awaiting comments from some. Bell Canada, Enbridge Gas, and Rogers Hydro One provided their standard comments. For the telecommunication companies, that's primarily a request to convey easements as necessary. Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority requested an update to their mapping within the county OP. An update to our mapping in the county OP, as well as the West Grey zoning, and that is to match the Conservation Authority mapping. The proposal is not within their approximate regulated area, so it does not require a permit from the Conservation Authority. In terms of public comments received, 5 comments have been submitted from 3 individuals. So I've grouped these comments into sort of 2 key themes, either environmental or more location and layout. So those environmental themes, Those include concerns about an increase in traffic and noise from both the construction and the residents, concerns about the proposed private servicing and possible impact on water supply and groundwater, stormwater management and the Styx River, loss of agricultural lands, fish habitat, wetlands, and woodlands. And then for those location and layout concerns, that there's no municipal infrastructure in Crawford was raised, I think, in all three of those comments, or by all three of those individuals, such as the water and sewage services in Crawford. So there's also no places of employment, recreational activities, and public transit. The types of housing, there was a concern, the single detached homes, that they may not be an affordable option for the community. The additional 13 driveways onto Mulek Road was raised, and then also an increased burden, potential increased burden on local hospitals, family doctors, and police. Next slide, please. So this is the end of my presentation here. Just to remind everybody that the application and submission documents are posted on the county website. And if anyone was unable to make the public meeting and still wants to provide their comments, they can do so by emailing me at cassandra.dillman@gray.ca or by providing written correspondence to the County of Gray. If you'd like to receive notice of future meetings or a decision, please email me and request to be notified in the future. And that concludes my presentation. Dana from Cobite Engineering is in attendance and also has a brief presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Cassandra. And yes, at this time, I'd like from Cobite, Ms. Kiefer. You want to turn on your mic first there, Dana?
Rookie mistake.
Well, you can use that, but I know you're no rookie to these presentations.
Um,
Ms. Kiefer, please go.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Eccles. My name is Dana Kiefer. I'm a senior development planner with Cobite Engineering. Joining me today are a couple of my colleagues to help answer any questions that might arise at the public meeting. So Travis Burnside and Stephen Cobine are here. They are both civil and environmental engineers and partners at Cobite Engineering out of Hanover. And then Gary Hendy is here from Gaiman Consultants Limited, who did the hydrogeological report. So hopefully lots of people here to answer any questions that council and the public may have. Next slide, please. So you're going to hear us planners probably say a lot of the same things as we somewhat warned you. The property is located in the hamlet of Crawford. I think why the planners keep harping on that is that that really signifies that the property has been slated for development. So it has been included in the settlement area and therefore slated for some further development. The subject lands have been severed previously to create 3 lots. So you see the 2 lots that have been taken out of that property, and then the retained would be that third that we are proposing the development on. It's approximately 15.5 hectares in size. It has frontage on Mulek and Concession 10, and the majority of the subject lands have been previously farmed. Next slide, please. The holding on the property is for an EIS. So we have completed that EIS. So that holding will be removed as part of the property, part of the zoning bylaw amendment, and we will be moving to a R1 and natural environment and a small open space zoning for the stormwater management plan. Next slide, please. So a 34 unit residential development is proposed with 34 new single detached lots, a municipal cul-de-sac on which 22 lots will front, and a stormwater management pond. These lots are mostly proposed for single detached homes to be on. Next slide, please. So we are requesting a rezoning from A3H restricted agriculture to R1A to permit the construction of single detached homes and a plan of subdivision. Did want to note for council that the zoning will include refining the natural environment zone on the property to implement the recommendations of the EIS and to protect the significant woodlands and habitats that were identified. It will actually probably be increased from what the zoning bylaw shows right now. And that reflects the on-the-ground study that was completed on the property. Next slide. In addition to that EIS, an MECP D55 water supply evaluation was completed. That confirms there's sufficient groundwater capacity available to service the development. An archaeological assessment is ongoing on the property currently. A servicing option study was completed, and individual wells and septic systems will service the development proposal. That's consistent with the recommendations of that report and consistent with what's in Crawford right now. Stormwater management report, an EIS, and a traffic impact study was also completed for the subject lands. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, the proposals are consistent with the Planning Act, the provincial policy statement, and conform to the County of Grey official plan. The proposed increase in density and number of residential units on the property aligns with the Grey County official plan's objective to direct residential growth into settlement areas. And the proposed use is consistent with the surrounding uses, lotting pattern, and servicing capabilities. That concludes my portion of the report, but we're very happy to take questions from both the public and council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dana. At this time, I'm going to open it up for any comments from the public. If you could, please use the microphone as we are streaming this. So the microphone's there. Give your name just for the record, and won't everybody jump at once. There'll be a few comments. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Ken Galtner. I live in the vicinity of Crawford, and I would like to support, I guess, the comments that were made to Grey County about the environmental plan, about noise, traffic, dust. Also, people who live there probably have children, have to go to school. It's roughly 40 kilometers round trip. If they do any after school activity, they won't be bused, I guess. And for traffic, for people who are employed, they probably have to go further than 40 clicks round trip. Both West Grey and Grey County have an environmental plan, climate action plan, whatever it's called. And if you care to read it, as far as I'm concerned, that development subdivision directly contravenes what's in the climate action plan. The further away you are from schooling, from work, from any kind of shops, you have to move back and forth. You have to go there. It's a difference if there's one family per 40 hectare or 100 acres, whatever, or if there are 30. And we want to reduce our carbon footprint. I don't think it's going to be reduced by having an extra 34 lawns that have to be mowed and people moving back and forth. So as far as I'm concerned, the environment, like I don't know if the blurb there is just that, like it's or if it's taken serious. I think you should ask yourself if that development is actually wise. Thanks for listening.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Anyone else? You'll have to push the, excuse me, push the gray button there. That'll get you activated.
How's that?
Now you're live.
Okay, I'll start again. I'm Fiona Deans. I live at 145 Anderson Drive, close enough to this development. I'm here to not support the development. When I first heard about it, my main concern was my water supply. Now your reports say that there should be little to no effect on the current wells. I find it hard to believe that 34 wells and 34 septic beds are not going to affect my water. If you can prove otherwise, I still won't believe you. And I believe that is one of the biggest concerns in our community. It's also a shame to lose that prime farmland. My family, we moved here in 2017. I was quite happy when our neighbors were cows. I moved from a city. I do not want to see that development. And basically, that water problem is my most biggest concern. And I really hope that you take what the residents of the current community are saying, because I don't know anybody, well, maybe one or two people whose business might benefit, but our neighbors, they are not happy.
Okay. I think there was a question there, but probably for the engineering, and I'm not going to ask back and forth. We can address that at the end of the comment period. Any other comments? Please, man. Okay.
Hello. Am I on?
You are.
Okay. My name is Glenda Thompson. I live up on concession 10, just east of the development. And I guess I have some questions which I hope could be answered. And one is for the county, like, where has anything like this ever been done before in Grey County? On agricultural land, to take clear land and develop 34 home subdivision. Like we see it on the edges of Durham, on the edges of Hanover, Chesley maybe, but where out in sort of basically, I think it's the middle of the country in a small settlement. Like it just doesn't seem consistent with where anything else in the county. So maybe the county could answer that if there is a precedent. The second question I have is related to like, why so many homes? Like, why can't you just make it consistent? If you're going to build on Mulock Road, why not make it consistent with what's across the road, right? Like one single homes fronting on Mulock Road that sort of add to the development, but not take it over. And that sort of relates to my next comment is how big are these homes going to be? Like if they're going to be like the Forest Estates, which I believe the developer did that subdivision as well, like they're mansions, like they're over $1 million homes, which is not consistent again with the community. Like, will they be homes that are sized to fit in with what's already there? Okay, and then my third comment is that if you're going to develop this area, like we've traveled around actually quite a bit in this last summer, and I have not found one road in all southwestern Ontario that is bad as Mulock Road. It is a terrible, terrible road. And I live on concession 10, and it's a really terrible gravel road. I don't know if any of you have traveled it. I don't know, Mr. Mayor, if you've traveled it, because I know you live close by, but it is constant. It's a constant washboard road. It's terrible. And as you add more homes, you get more traffic, more delivery, more Amazon deliveries and whatever. Like it just tears up the infrastructure. And I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Glenda. No, sir.
Yeah.
If you want to make a comment, please use the mic.
Okay, is this the only chance for comment?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, sorry.
No, that's fine.
You're welcome to write it.
Oh, all right, yeah. Thank you, Cassandra, Brittany, whoever said that. Yes.
Okay, my name is Ray Alexander. I have a property in Crawford. I have a question, first of all, is where does the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, where do their concerns end? So that's one question I have. I did go over the report from the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, and I thought it was 120 meters was within their area, but I heard earlier from the planning that that they're not I took it as they're not concerned because of it's outside of their area, but it is within 120 meters of the river. So that's a question that I have, is where does their area end and start, and why are they not concerned? Density is obviously a concern, as was brought up earlier. It is a village, and can the environment handle the density relating to water, wastewater, and stormwater? And again, the distance from the waterway. The Styx River feeds directly into the Saugeen River watershed, and to be dumping stormwater into there, and again, 34 units taking water, putting wastewater back in just septic in individual septic systems. The density seems very high for the area, and it's a concern of mine living in the area. And that's it.
Okay.
Those are my concerns. I'm not against the building, putting a subdivision in. I just think the density is way too high for the area.
Okay, thank you, Ray. Yes, sir.
Is this on?
Yes, it is.
It is. Okay, so my name's David Lang. I'm on the 10th concession east of the development. I don't have a lot of comments that haven't been raised, but one I have is on the well issue. And I know the people who have done the studies have said there's all kinds of water capacity. But I recall my father lived in Kelvin, and he had a nice 20-acre lot, and the water was great. But then all kinds of development occurred around him, and the water turned to sulfur. And I know that there's a lot of sulfur in the well report. There was an identification of significant amount of sulfur. And I really don't want the people in Crawford, whether they have sulfur or not, I don't know. But I know some do now, and I wouldn't want that to become, pervasive, where we have sulfur in the vast majority of the wells in Crawford, because it's a terrible thing. If anybody's had sulfur in their well, it ain't a good thing. It's very bad. You take a hot shower, it smells like you know what I mean? It's not a good thing. So I'd hate to see that happen. I guess the other thing that I worry about, first, I can be like Trump a little bit and wander a bit, but the roads, they're terrible. And you think, well, we're going to have, let's say 40 new people driving up and down Mulock Road and driving to Welbeck Sawmill for the first 3 or 4 years to get various things for their house. It's just the road's going to be a mess. And I think there should be some commitment, if this thing goes ahead, from the county or the municipality of West Gray to have a plan to do something with the road, because they're getting worse every year. They're not getting better, they're getting worse, because there's more traffic, and this is just going to push the thing off the end. So that's a pretty important thing. The other thing is, here we have, and comments were made earlier about the environmental impact. In fact, I'm guessing that if this thing goes ahead in its current form, that at some point in the future, there'll be a class in municipal government where this is a case study of how not to do a development. Like if anything you've heard about developments happening on, agriculture land with this number of private wells and septics miles away from services such as schools, doctors, shopping, it just is so incongruent with the direction that we have to go in as a society. It's just like, it just doesn't make any sense to me at all. And you, Kevin, I know you were at the meeting a while back where these issues were brought up. This was in Markdale. I don't know if you recall that or not, but it was, it was very clear that, this kind of development on agricultural land is just not something we should think about. I mean, we're getting rid of how many acres of, like 300 acres of agricultural land every day in Ontario, and this is just another little bit. Anyway, the other thing that really worries me is that we're going to have families there, and they're going to have kids, and these kids are going to have nothing to do. They're going to, and what happens when you get 60 kids with nothing to do? It's not a good thing. They start to get into trouble. They start to get into drugs. They start to get into all kinds of trouble. And to me, if there's going to be a development, let's have a development where we have, some facilities for the families that are going to be in that area. And we have in Crawford, we have nothing. It's not a teenage-friendly community at all. We have no ball diamonds, no pickleball courts. We got nothing. And we're going to have, you guys, everybody here knows, you get a lot of kids, weird kids, not a good thing. Anyway, that's the most of my comments there. I'm going to have something else here. That's the most of it, I think, yeah. Anyway, bottom line is, this goes ahead. We're going to have people making quite a bit of money, selling $1 million homes, and the people of Crawford are going to be left to deal with the issues that result from this, what I would call poorly thought out and poorly planned development. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, David. Anyone else? Is there anybody online? Ashley? As a comment? You have a few minutes if you want. There was a number of questions there. I think one of the first ones to maybe answer would be from Cassandra on development in Grey County, maybe the conservation's influence, but certainly there was a question asked whether there's been anything of this nature in Grey County before. Do you have any comments on that? Jackson comes to mind. No, you turned it off.
I turned myself off. There we go. That's better. Thank you. And through you, Chair. I will say I am relatively new with the County of Grey. So I started 4 months ago, I believe it was. So in regards to like a specific development, I don't have an example, but I can say that there's around 47 areas in the county that are identified as secondary settlement areas. And then those areas, there's primary settlement areas. So that would be like Durham. So it has full servicing. And then there's secondary settlement areas, more like Crawford, that may not have servicing or would be private, partial servicing. So they may have municipal water or they may have municipal sewage or sewer hookups. So there are many areas where something like this may be possible. In terms of both provincial directions, so the provincial policy statement, I think it's still called that for another few days at least, directs development to settlement areas. And the county official plan also directs development to settlement areas, so primary settlement or secondary settlement areas. Is that sufficient to answer the question there? Yes, I also have that question. So the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, they do have a strip of regulated land that goes through the property. It's along the tributary of the river. And their regulated area is about 30 meters on either side of that. So if development fell within that area, they would need a permit and additional studies and things like that. But because the proposed development is outside of that 30-meter area along the stream, it's outside of their regulated area. It would be through.
I will allow it for one, please.
The 30 meters, not what they gave as a distance from that creek that feeds into the Styx River. Like, was that 30 meters? That's not a hard, fast rule. That's what they recommended from that creek. Correct?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm not sure if I quite follow that. I also have an image that may help us that I can show you after as well.
Through you,
Dana?
Mr. Mayor, Ken. So what you're referring to is slightly different.
Yeah.
So what the SPCA has is a regulatory area that they regulate. So they regulate on 30 meters on either side of that creek. What we're referring to is the proposed natural environment zone, which is a recommendation that came out of the EIS. So they would require, if you built a house or anything within those 30 meters, to obtain an additional permit. The way we have designed the sites and the lots, all of those houses are going to be located outside of that EP zone. Is that okay?
So the building foot,
30 meters. It's about conservation, so they're not looking at the Styx River at all.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, on this application, because the Styx River is not on the subject lands, no.
and the houses on the on the east side of the Styx River, that's all in the settlement area. And they've been built in there with approval. Most of them have been built in there with the approval of the conservation. And everything on this is obviously on the other side of the road. So no, it wouldn't be on the influenced area from SVCA. Okay? Could you use the mic? Just even if you could use Dave's mic right there, just so everybody online. And we've got it recorded.
I guess my question was, has this ever been done in Grey County where you took like what it was 15 hectares and developed a 34 home subdivision? That was the question. Thanks.
I'm gonna let Brittany, Becky, I had the B part right. I'm sorry, Becky. My apologies. Spent
There we go.
Thanksgiving with
Okay.
my daughter,
Yeah.
Brittany. Yeah.
Sorry, I was actually just going to say, so I have not actually worked on one myself. I will say most of our secondary settlement areas are the mapping and kind of that historic urban form is based on kind of a desktop mapping exercise that looked at, where do we have these historic settlements throughout the county that have kind of, been around oftentimes for 100 or 150 years. And where does it make sense to kind of look at opportunities for growth in those areas on a very limited basis? And so a lot of times within those kind of defined mapped areas, we don't see these large pieces of land that are actually available for development. A lot of the kind of development within those boundaries is pretty much capped out already, just based on what's there in a lot of cases. I would say Crawford is kind of one of those outliers where there is this one large contiguous property that hasn't been developed, where we're seeing this opportunity. I'd also note, just I think through the past few years, with the influx of new development to the county in general, and as a result of, COVID and people moving out of cities and wanting to explore different living environments, people coming to retire, I do think that we have seen more pressure than we normally have historically on some of those smaller settlement areas where, we haven't anticipated levels of growth. And to everyone's kind of points about density and servicing, yeah, I certainly hear you on that. We hear you. It is, there has been a peer review process undertaken on some of those studies. And so we've kind of got a third-party opinion there. I understand they're exploring some conversations around looking at tertiary septic systems, which can be accommodated on a smaller lot, but there's a higher level of nitrate removal and contaminants associated with septic systems. So there are kind of new technologies that are coming out that are becoming more permitted under the building code that can allow some sort of opportunities to have, to some extent, a greater density on some of these unserviced lands, but it's very case specific. It depends a lot on the soil. It depends a lot on the aquifers and the bedrock types and depths, all of those things. So it really is up to those site specific studies to kind of understand what's appropriate on those lands.
I'd just like to add, Kilsyth would be one place where you'll see this happen. Up at the end of Gray Road 3, where it meets 21, 26, 21. Jackson is another spot where it happens. Bruce County, one that comes to mind very much is Burgoyne, is another one that's being developed in similar size. That one is even Jackson, yeah, Kilsyth, we're both on farm properties. Burgoyne is definitely on farm properties. They're going east out of Burgoyne is being developed in this same fashion. And under the provincial policy statement, rural lots that are going to be on septic and well, I think it's recommended to be 1 acre. Is that what the PPS stands for? Or is it 2? 2. Yeah. Which these would qualify in under. I'm not. I thought it was on.
There is
Mr. Smith?
there is no number in the provincial planning. So what the developer and their engineers have done is done the studies to take a look at nitrates coming from a septic system and looking at the results of that over a certain size of lot. We certainly have a rule of thumb, I guess you could say, once we get over a certain size, that we aren't concerned, but where the numbers from the provincial calculations come out is where we begin to look at minimum lot areas for a rural area such as Crawford.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said it was in the PPS as a number. Thank you, David, for saying that. It was recommended 1 acre or more. And that's what these are, my understanding. Was there any other questions there for the engineering part that we had? Dana? Yes. Yep. If you had picked up any questions that haven't been.
Through you, Mayor Eccles, I did take some notes through the public that spoke. So I was going to answer some of your questions if available. We might, if I could perhaps ask in a little bit for Gary Hendy, who's the hydrogeologist, to come up and speak on the water quality and quantity. We could maybe address some of those concerns. But I can speak to why so many homes and how big the homes are going to be. So we don't really have control as a developer over what the final purchaser builds. So we can't really speak to how big the homes are going to end up being on those lots. Why so many homes? We were looking to design a site where the cul-de-sac was going to have two sides. So that helps to make road development more economical. I would also note that all of these meet the minimum lot size requirements in the zoning bylaw, as well as the frontage and those requirements. So when you can plan in a cohesive manner, like we're looking at right now with a larger site, you can do studies and really try to gain efficiencies in terms of lot size when you look at things in an overarching way. We have had discussions about Mulock Road. I'm not sure if municipal staff wanted to talk about that. It was acknowledged that it is on the docket to be reconstructed. And then the stormwater into the creek. So we will have a stormwater management pond, which helps to deal with sedimentation and thermal regime issues. So it cools the water down, pulls it out of the bottom. So that helps with those concerns. Through you, Mayor Eccles, that was everything I had written down, but I'm happy to answer questions while I'm on the hot seat.
Well, maybe Gary just wants to make a comment on the water. Well, water. There's 2 chairs. You don't have to move, Dana. You can stay there.
I'll stay there.
I need support. Good afternoon, through you, Mr. Mayor, to address some of these groundwater related issues. So briefly, our study of the Crawford area, looking at local wells and the range of test rates that a lot of the wells were built at, the average test rate was 75 liters a minute. That is about 4 or 5 times more water on average than what a house will need in this development, or a typical house. Our testing showed that these wells are very productive. They don't change the groundwater levels very much. And our evaluation as to how much groundwater levels might change is probably in the range of what the water table varies seasonally. So typically the water table varies by about 1 meter plus or minus, and that is maybe the change we might see over a 6-month period. But in my experience, our predictions always end up over predicting what actually happens. And with what I've seen on, hundreds of developments I've worked on, and developments, range from a few houses to upwards of 300 homes on wells and septics, we just don't see those kinds of effects anyway. But our work did show that we're confident that you can support 34 homes on individual wells. The quantity is there in the aquifer. The aquifer is productive. Water quality varies. And the reason why the water quality varies is there's without getting too technical, there's a very thin upper layer that seems to have good water quality, but it's underlain by an area of rock that has higher sulfates, not sulfur, the sulfur smell that some have referred to, but these are sulfates. The sulfates and the hardness in the rock, and the hardness is naturally occurring as well. I've reached out to 2 very large water treatment companies and given them the concentrations of the sulfates and hardness we see in this water, and they are confident they can remove most, if not all, of the sulfates and the hardness. And we don't need to remove all of the sulfates and hardness anyway. It's good to have some minerals in the water. But the point is the water is treatable. If the wells are able to be drilled, maybe in the shallower part of the rock, that might alleviate some of the water treatment that might be necessary if the water is there. If not, the salina, which has naturally occurring aesthetic, parameters that don't affect your health, just things that affect the appearance, taste of the water, can be treated. So in summary, there is the water. The water is there in abundant supply to support the development without having an adverse effect on your homes. And one person referred to, by the way, little to no risk of having effect on people's wells. Well, for a professional to stand up and say there is no risk is not really something we should say. What we do is we categorize it as little to no risk, moderate or high risk. This area of the aquifer, as productive as it is, would be classified, in my opinion, as having little to no adverse effect on neighboring wells. So we think the risk level is low here.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Could you just use sir, could you use the mic? Yeah, just because I know we do have people online.
Can you quickly just describe is there a risk analysis that you go through to determine that?
Yes, I do groundwater interference assessment. So what I do is I simulate what could happen if 34 wells are pumping together at an average rate. And then I can estimate how much I think the water levels in the bedrock aquifer will change because of that. The reason why the change is so low is, and I hadn't gotten into this part, if you look at this 34-hectare parcel of land, the amount of water that naturally falls onto it, rainfall, a certain portion of that will infiltrate into the ground. We call that recharge. The recharge capacity of this site is probably at least double the amount of water we are going to take out of it. So we are probably not going to be taking out more water than what naturally falls onto the entire site, which is why the risk helps, give me additional confidence that the risk level is low.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lang, we've only got about 4 feet from those mics, so if you could. Turn that on here.
Yeah, so one of the things that in terms of the amount of water that falls on the site, when we get the roadway paved, I assume, and driveways, and there's the back of that property, like towards the east, I guess, is very steep. So you've got, I'm pretty sure double car driveways going into big lots, and that water is going to just flow right down onto the roadway and eventually off the site. So the recharge rate under those circumstances, you've seen the severe slope, and I don't really fully understand how convenient that's going to be for septic beds either. Like, it's a very severe slope going on towards the east there. Anyway, so that's my concern, is that, yeah, there might be a lot of water that comes onto the site today, but once you get double car driveways, paved roadways, like, a lot of that water is going to run right off, particularly given the severe nature of the slope.
So to address your question, that's a very good question. The one I spoke to my colleagues about who are doing the wastewater evaluation. So what happens is there's the soils on that slope, they're referred to as till. They're less permeable than the soils down in the flat area. The soils in the flat area, there's a very large area of, call it permeable, sandy soil. So what happens, or we can see happening, is when that water drains down the hill, it's going to flow on top of those sands and gravels and infiltrate into the ground. A lot of it will. When you put homes on this property, the rainfall on the homes, when they come down through the downspouts, they could be directed if you wanted to onto the land. They don't necessarily have to be sent out to the road in a stormwater pond. You could direct that runoff onto the lawns. Those lawns should be able to absorb most, if not all, of that rainfall and actually add more recharge to the water table, because now you're capturing 100% of the rainfall. You're not trying to infiltrate 20% of it, because now you're diverting 100% of rainfall from a rooftop onto the ground. You're actually adding more water to the water table, and that's all part of in high intensity development areas refer to that as a water balance. So we could actually add more water if we needed to the property to enhance recharge. But either way, I'm still confident that the water is there to support it. The recharge of the site is very high and good, and I don't have concerns.
Okay, that one's working. My question, okay, so you're saying there's lots of water, wonderful. But what effect does 34 septic bags have on the quality of that water that's going in my well? Anybody answer that one?
I can answer that into it. It's part of the submission overall, and the documents are available on the West Gray website. They did do a functional servicing study. Functional servicing looks at 2 things. One is, where's the best place to get water to drink? And second of all, what is the best thing to do with sewage waste? This particular case, when they take a look at functional servicing and they look at, well, can we build a sewage treatment plant? No, it doesn't make any financial sense. Doesn't make any financial sense to have a larger communal than on this particular case either, considering the size of lots. So they begin to take a look at individual septics. When they do individual septics, they do what they call a nitrate study. So the province, when they take a look at groundwater, they take in terms of drinking groundwater, they establish a number of different rules. One rule is about things such as that are aesthetics. How does water smell? But it's not necessarily bad for your health. And the other part of groundwater is, of course, is the quality, for example, E. coli and things like that, which you've heard many things over the years. And part of that drinking water side is also what they call nitrates. So when they propose septic systems, they take a look at a standard size of septic system under the building code for the number of bedrooms. They calculate the amount of nitrate. They know the size of the lot, and they determine whether or not the lot is big enough to absorb the nitrates coming from a septic system. And if the calculations, and it's a calculation, says less than, then it's good to go. If the calculation says more than, it's not. So they provided the calculations from the engineer, and the calculations came at less than the maximum permitted by the province. So they have done their background work on that also.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm Barb Murdoch. I go to Crawford United Church, and we're not able to use our water because the water is hard. So is that not going to interfere with your wells as well?
Look, Gary, you want to speak to that one about hardness?
For you, Mr. Mayor, the water is hard. That's very common for the water we're finding. Some of our wells have hard water, and that is the water that I was saying earlier that two reputable water treatment companies can address, as long with the high sulfates as well. They've encountered this type of water and they deal with it all the time.
Church has never done it.
The church could reach out to one of these water treatment companies if it wanted to improve its water quality. That's a personal preference issue.
Thank you, Mark. Anything else? Then I'll say that we've concluded everything on this portion from that one. And what do we got? 301. Okay. We'll close this one and we'll move to zoning amendment ZA 29, 2021. May just take a minute. There's not as much interest in the next one. Thank you, Gary. Okay. Okay. All right, we'll call the meeting back to order. And the next order of business is zoning amendment ZA 29, 2021, 423018 Rocky Saugeen Road. we'll open this public meeting. And Ashley, do you want to make comment from anybody that is joining in for this portion? Just to make sure that. I'm just asking Ashley behind you, sir, about the online. Do you want to, that's IT stuff. We'll get to there for a second. Don't worry. Ashley.
As noted, at the opening of the meeting, public participation must be done through Zoom. Members of the public joining virtually wishing to participate in this portion of the meeting may do so in one of two ways. If you have joined via phone, press *9 to raise your hand. This will let us know that you would like to speak. Alternatively, *9 can also be used to lower your hand. If you have joined virtually, you can either raise your hand by clicking either the blue or yellow hand icon located in the bottom corner of your screen, or by sending a chat message to myself, Ashley Noble, Communications Coordinator, either stating that you would like to speak or what you would like read into the record on your behalf.
Thank you, Ashley. And I have some official comments from the chair's position. I'd like to remind everyone that the purpose of this public meeting is to receive input from the public. Every person who attends a statutory public meeting required under the Planning Act shall be given an opportunity to make representation in respect to the proposed bylaw. All submission materials for this application are available at West Grey Municipal Office during regular business hours. Recent amendments to the Planning Act by the province now limit appeal rights on zoning bylaw amendment applications to the applicant, public bodies, and specified persons who made oral or written submissions to the municipality prior to a decision being made. Specific persons generally include energy, railroad, and telecommunication providers, as well as NAV Canada. This meeting is an essential part of the decision-making process. Feedback received will be considered in the decision from the West Grey Council. An explanation of how the public and agency comments factored into the decision will be included in the notice of passing of the bylaw. For changes made in the proposed bylaw after the holding of a public meeting, council will determine if any further notice will be given respecting the proposed bylaw, and the determination of council as to the giving of further notice is final and not subject to review in any court, no matter the extent of the changes made in the proposed bylaw. Thank you. And I have some official comments from the clerk. Mr. Eckensweiler.
Thank you, Mayor Eccles, and through you, notice of this public meeting was circulated to the prescribed bodies, posted on the subject property, and mailed to all properties within 120 meters of the subject property in accordance with the Planning Act. Anyone wishing to provide verbal comments at this public meeting is asked to sign the sign-in sheet located on the speaker's table. The personal information collected at this public meeting is collected under the authority of the Planning Act. The information collected will be used to complete the zoning bylaw amendment process and will form part of the public record. Questions about this collection should be addressed to me, the Director of Legislative Services / Clerk. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Corporation or the Municipality of West Grey on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, you must make a written request to the Municipality of West Grey, care of the Director of Legislative Services / Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Now you can take a breath, Jamie. The overview of the planning, and I'll leave that to Mr. Smith. David?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. I'll ask Ashley to go page 42 of 51 in the PDF, please. I'll give a quick orientation, and what you're seeing on the screen is the draft zoning schedule. Property with a dotted black line around the entire property. You can see it's almost 100 acres in size. On the west side is the Highway 6 and a small natural environment, which also matches up with the significant woodlands. A large portion of what we're proposing is an A2 restricted agriculture special holding, an I-447-H, which would be an institutional use special. And I'll take your attention to the far east side along the east property line is an M4 zone, which is a licensed aggregate operation, but not currently in operation. It's all licensed and everything else, and has bearing on some of the work that we do on this particular property and why some of the zoning is set up this way. It has access off of Rocky Saugeen. There is no access proposed or being probably granted from Highway 6. It's not being asked for. The access to the property is off of Rocky Saugeen Road, off of West Grey municipal roadway. Can we go to the next picture, please? This gives you an idea of the overall aerial photograph, and what's dropped on this is the building itself and the parking lot in the kind of bottom left-hand corner. And the lines that are hard to see are the setbacks from the buildings and so forth to the property lines, both to the east to the M2 zone, to the west to the highway, and to the southern property line, et cetera, with the gray as a driveway coming in as a big curve on onto the property from Rocky Saugeen. It doesn't really show it very well. Maybe you zoom in a lot more, you'd be able to see where an existing cottage / dwelling is also on the property. The previous screen, if we go back up just one. So the I-447 matches up with the pitch going down. Matches up with the parking lot. Next one, sorry, Ashley. The I-44 matches up with the location of the parking lot in the building. They're supposed to overlap, give you an idea of where we're on the property. And one more, please. Next page. This is a blow up. It's just running in a different direction. North is to the parking end side of the property. It's not oriented north-south. Okay, so the parking lot that on the far right-hand side of the picture is the north, and the building is on the south with the south property line on the left-hand side. So there's how it all fits together between the zoning and air photo and the site-specific on the property itself. And we'll leave it there if you don't mind. The application requests rezoning of a portion of the property to permit an institutional use and a place of worship comprised of a multi-use building that will be used primarily for religious education. When not in use as an education facility, the property would host occasional conferences and similar programs for other related organizations. During the off-season, the multi-use building will be utilized by members of the community for weddings or related events. The remainder of the lands, the A2 of the lands, would be zoned to permit the continuation of agricultural uses. If they wish to take hay, they wanted to put a corn crop on it, got no problem at all with that kind of thing. That's not necessarily what they're proposing, but we certainly see the ability to leave that as a flexible use. The forestry would also continue on the property together with an existing single detached dwelling, garage and shed, and to allow for picnics and walking trails. We're not seeing any other development on the property in the sense of any other buildings or anything else like that. If they have a weekend kind of thing and there's cars parked over there, we don't get too excited about that in terms of outside the institutional, but it is basically a passive recreation, forestry, agriculture with a single family zoning on the property, that portion of the property. Proposed building infrastructure includes a new laneway and driveway, and a reconfigured entrance to Rocky Saugeen Road, the parking area with approximately 110 parking spaces, plus handicapped, system for managing stormwater, septic tile bed, septic tank, and a private water well. Property is designated rural in the County of Grey official plan with significant woodlands, an area of natural and scientific interest, natural heritage system core constraints on the property. As I mentioned, it abuts a licensed aggregate operation to the east. The zoning at this point in time would include H holding to address the requirement for an archaeological assessment. The archaeological assessment is complete but not finished review. And second of all, is a sign off from the Ministry of Transportation, because the property is within the Ministry of Transportation corridor control area. So it requires a definitive sign off from them on terms of the development itself. Even though it does not have a direct access onto 6, they still control development within a certain distance. Site plan control is proposed for that portion of the property containing the multi-use building, parking lot, and required septic beds. So just the I-447-H that you see here on the screen in front of you. In terms of the background reports, we did receive a planning report and support from Questa Planning Consultants, which included proposed building locations, lot grading, development grading, lot entrance plan, preliminary functional servicing report, including access and fire routes, stormwater management, sewage servicing, on-site water supply. The traffic impact brief was prepared. It has been submitted to the Ministry of Transportation for their final sign off. And we don't see any particular issues with that, even though we still include the H holding on it. There was a slope review because coming down off onto the Saugeen Road is a bit of a slope down there. So we did have to have a little bit of engineering done on that just to make sure that the entrance works overall. And lastly, there is a forest management plan on the property for long-term forest management. Circulated the application to various agencies, Westgrade Public Works, Westgrade Fire, Ministry of Transportation, as I mentioned, County of Grey, Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, and overall, there's no particular concerns with anything, as again, the MTO is still, will sign off on the corridor control permit or whatever it is that they require. We haven't received any comments from the public, verbal or written, positive, nothing at this particular time. We reviewed the provincial policy statement for rural areas and municipalities. We reviewed the County of Grey official plan for development of an institutional use in a rural area. And we have also reviewed the West Grey zoning bylaw, and we made specific recommendations in terms of the uses in the zoning bylaw as proposed in the recommendations on the particular property. Overall, we don't see any issues between the provincial policy statement. It conforms to the PPS. It conforms to the requirements of the County of Grey official plan, and overall represents good land use planning. And we recommend that this committee will recommend to council that they pass the zoning bylaw for the property. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Is there anyone online representing the owner and or planning on this, Ashley? Ms. Noble? No? Is there anyone from the public wanting to make comment on this? No. And I see the third one on the agenda for this one then, if there is nobody making comment, was for a decision to go forward to prepare the bylaw. Is that what you're recommending, Planner Smith?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Does council want to proceed? Do we have somebody that would like to move the recommendation? Well, I'm just wondering, do we take questions after I move the motion or take questions beforehand in the public process? I'm going to do the public process one. Yep, procedurally, I'm good to go. He's not arguing with me on this one. Thank you, Jamie. Councillor Hutchison. Oh, no, he's paying attention. Go ahead, Doug.
Just a couple questions. Noted that it talks about having a multi-use building, and it's institutional was the word they used at some point, but yet this building is also going to be used possibly for weddings, recreation, and so on. How does that work in terms of taxation? Like institutional is taxed, if there are taxed at all, is different than, say, a building that's used for weddings. How does that affect our tax
Not a
base?
clue.
Sorry?
Not a clue. That impacts sort of the different uses in terms of it. It's not a standard church, as you can see, with a set of pews upstairs. It's a multi-use room. It morphs in that regard. So good question. Don't know. Impact we'll sort out an assessment and what is church, quote unquote, and what is not, and maybe none of it is, maybe all of it is.
What about our building department? Do they have any comment on this?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I can't comment on the taxation portion of it. I don't know exactly how it works. I mean, churches has weddings every day. So when we speak to weddings, there's two portions of there's the ceremony itself, and then there's the reception after. So that's the question. I mean, as I said, almost every church does wedding receptions on a regular basis, and our wedding ceremonies on a regular basis. Some will do receptions, some won't, and that there would be some type of taxation process that would have a formula that would determine what is used for the church portion that would be exempt, and then the remainder of the building that wouldn't be exempt.
Okay, so I'll throw that out there that maybe we can get that clarified. Maybe by the time we come with the bylaw or something, just I'd be interested to know how that's going to work, because I have some concerns with this in terms of, okay, it's fine, it's institutional, which I believe, or we don't tax. And then there's going to be other uses going on in this area. So I'll leave that for now, and maybe our Director of Finance can clarify that for us. In the report, it also mentions septic beds, but on the diagram, it only looks like one bed for this one building. So didn't look like there was accommodations. It looks like just a functional the building, but not necessarily. So would there be more than one septic bed? It says septic beds.
There is a septic bed on the drawing. You are correct. I don't, forestall or foresee that if they decide to go a different direction with the building, that they don't need more than one. We don't zone for the number of beds. Yeah, there might be more than one. There might be one huge one. There might be two or three. And for that matter, it depends on how the building goes forward. So the plural is neither here nor there, as I guess you could say it as from a planning perspective.
Oh, and she appears.
Director of Finance is probably the person to answer that first question. And there she is. Ask and she shall appear. Carrie, the question come up about the institutional designation on this property, but there was some hinted at some commercial uses as well too. On the taxation, would impact tax part of it or put an assessment on portions of it on the idea of use? I'll let you continue.
Yes, through you, Mayor. Yeah, if it's a building that's used for commercial, they'll assess that value for the commercial, similar to if there's acreage that's used for farming, they'll put that into the farming category. So it depends on the use of the property and what section is it being used. Similar, they would also, if it was a home occupation, there might be a very small value that would be in someone's home based on using a room. They'll have a small value of commercial in that case.
Yeah, okay. Well, I guess I'll leave that up to impact, but it seems like a bit of a challenging one when they're saying that some of their members may use it for weddings, sort of thing. So like, is that one wedding a year, two weddings a year, 5 weddings? It becomes, and then recreation is another thing. Is it used for recreation activities, and how many of those a year? So I think it's really a gray area. So I don't know how they figured it all out, but I'll leave it up to professionals for sure. Just thought it was a little curious, the design of this whole thing. I do have a couple more questions, if I may.
Go ahead.
So I see in here that the report, it looks like they still need a MTO approval, which is interesting when it's coming off our roads, but MTO approval and archaeological study is required. That's still to come, correct?
The archaeological study is done. It just has not received provincial sign off because it's done by consultants. And then, of course, in Grey County with our First Nations, Saugeen Ojibwe also takes a look at some of those and makes comments at times. But at the end of the day, the ministry, you can't remember which one at the moment anymore, provides a sign off that it's being accepted into the register. Once it's accepted into the register, it would satisfy an H if it's on it. It just hasn't come in on the registry at this time. If it comes in before you pass the bylaw, then we can remove the requirement for that in the bylaw, right? In a sense. The second part is, the MTO corridor control on provincial highways is relatively large. And of course, it gets larger the bigger the highway. So obviously, you have 400 series highways, a lot larger than ours. But they do have exert control because of the intersection and so on and so forth with Rocky Saugeen. And in this particular case, it's not a single family home. There's 110 parking spots. So they wish to, of course, ensure that their alignment, turning lanes, if required, and so on and so forth, on a provincial series highway kind of thing has been met, and there's no issues with that. So yes, they control permitting at the end of the day.
Okay. And to know further, there is a campground on that road too, so that would add to the traffic into that area. One last question for me. Garbage and recycling. It says in here there are no issues regarding the potential volume of garbage and recycling. I'm just wondering, with institutions, do we pick up garbage for institutions, or and what about commercial industrial? I'm just curious about the that wording and where we are with that.
Well, that's not, so we're not going to use the word recycling at all, okay? Let's not talk about that one, okay? On the commercial side, so it's not commercial per se. This is a institutional use, right? You are a member of the congregation. Do they accept payment to use the facility for your wedding? That's up to them. But it's not you're going to see an advertisement on Facebook or something like that, come rent the hall. It's not that kind of sense of the word commercial, okay? Which pushes back institutional. And we're using the word institutional together with a place of worship because we have school and then we also have worship. Okay, so that's why we have both of those. And one happens on Sunday and the other parts happen the other 6 days of the week. So that's where we're getting the two. Now then, garbage, since it's not commercial, they were, and I would certainly defer to Nicole, who knows inside and out. If they put bag tags on their bags at the end of a driveway, then they will pick it up regardless of volume, as long as they're tagged. Because it's not a commercial use. So on a Sunday or a Saturday, whenever they have worship and they have 2 bags of garbage, they have 2 bags of garbage. If they have a Sunday day school or whatever it is, and they got 5 bags of garbage, they have 5 bags of garbage, as long as they're tagged and they meet the requirements for pickup, the West Gray waste handling bylaw, waste management bylaw.
Okay, any other questions? Comments? Seeing none, we do have a motion to prepare the bylaw for this. Moved by Deputy Mayor Hutchison, seconder. Councillor Forrester. Scott, Tom. Any questions on the motion to prepare the bylaw for this zoning amendment? Are questions on the motion? Was that a vote for, or was that a question? No, better be on the motion that's on the floor, Mr. Hutchison. Counselor, go ahead, Doug.
Just a little curious why the GM Blue Plan, the people behind this applicant haven't made a presentation. It would have been nice to have a little more information. That's all. It's not a question, sorry, it's a comment.
I'm assuming they thought that everything in the package, it was self-explanatory. I don't know.
We are, myself and Carl and Jeff and all the rest of it reviewed on your behalf, become somewhat intimate with things, with reports and so on and so forth. So, yeah, whether or not it's a vote in confidence of the staff's recommendation and our ability to speak to the comments or not, I'll take it as that. So,
okay. No other questions or comments on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Declare that carried.
thank you, Mayor, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And with that, we only have the 2 zonings on today's planning meeting, and we've dealt with both of them. Number 5 on the agenda is we've dealt with everything on the agenda. Business completed. I'll declare the